You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Engel for TGI Sports Talk. How are you today? It is Friday, January 29th, the end of another month. Hard to believe. Another month gone away. COVID, please stay away. Very cold here in East Greenbush, New York. We're broadcasting live from East Greenbush, the first and only live streaming webcast here, sports webcast from East Greenbush, New York. A little cold here today. I don't know where you're at, but it's 5 here and the wind chill's in the teens and not going to get much better all day. A little warmer tomorrow, but I welcome all of those of you in. I'll remind all the groups that I share this to today. You'll have some relevant content. My guest today, I'm still waiting on my guest today, Tom Keegan. Tom's a sports writer, has been with the Boston Herald, the New York Post, the Daily Standard, or not the Daily Standard, but the Baltimore Sun, Daily Southtown in Chicago. Also been on ESPN Radio in New York. And he worked for the Orange County Register and was covered the Dodgers. So we're going to talk to Tom today about Tommy Lasorda was our original topic when we booked this time. And since then, we've had a lot of passings. I think 11 Hall of Famers have passed in the last year. We're going to talk about Tommy, Hank Aaron, and probably Dick Allen today a bit. Hopefully, Tom makes it in here. I would like to thank my guest last week, Ed Lynch. We had a great response from you Met fans and Cub fans to Ed's appearance. So thank you for Dave Gadd. Good morning, Dave Gadd. Dave Gadd saying we're going to have another snowstorm next week. That's good. The cold's going to snap and the snow is going to come back. Anyway, thanks, Ed Lynch. Great response from you Mets and Cubs fans and baseball fans in general. I hope we have the same response to today's show once we get Tom in here. As far as next week, just to kind of, while I'm waiting on Tom, let me stretch here a little bit. Next week, I could have a show. We're going to do Super Bowl show on Friday. I hope to have a couple of local sportscasters, sports writers on. And we're going to do the Super Bowl. I'll have more information on who this weekend. On Sunday, I won't do my regular show. This week, I'll be on live, 9 a.m. Eastern time. In fact, we'll have Jim Beringer from The Last Word on Hockey from Mad Radio Network. He'll be on at 10:30 to talk about some hockey news. But we'll cover, the Super Bowl, MLB news, college basketball, cover the gamut like we do normally on Sundays. The following Sunday, my show won't be live. I'll be on for at least 3 hours with Mac and Jack, also from the Northeast Streaming Sports Network, where you can also catch this show and many, many others. Guys, we're covering the gamut on Northeast Streaming Sports. So I will broadcast that show live as well on the TGI Sports Talk page. Sorry, just messaging Tom again. So we're going to have a lot of coverage of the Super Bowl next week. And then on the 12th, I'll have Doug DeCinces will be my guest on Friday. And then going forward, we'll see where we're at. So again, today we want to talk about the passings of some of these legends recently. Gosh, it's been really sad, the number of guys that have passed away recently. Tom Seaver, near and dear to many of my Met fans' hearts. Obviously, Henry Aaron recently, Don Sutton recently, Phil Niekro, Lou Brock, Al Kaline, Dick Allen, Tommy Lasorda. The list goes on and on. I did a vlog about this here last week. And these guys have been near and dear to my heart. And Tom's having some problems. We may do a call-in with Tom this morning. I won't go through the same thing I went through with Hal McCoy. So anyway, a lot of these guys are near and dear to my heart. Because of the era that I grew up in, loved watching these guys play baseball, and it's very, very. It's a very hard time to I don't know. I think all of you are the same age of me, 60, 61, 60, whatever your age. I mean, if you're of a certain age, then this affects you, and you feel a little bit a loss of your a bit of your childhood, because these are guys we grew up with. These are guys that we had a connection with, and we didn't see them. It wasn't like they were, it isn't like we saw them every night in, night out on Sports Center and everything else going on. We saw them in all-star games, a lot of these guys. If they were in our local market, well, here in upstate New York, we still only got a handful of Yankee games as a Yankee fan, and Met games. We didn't have cable. We didn't have the New York stations until, up my late teens, probably. So we saw these guys in all-star games, a game of the week. And that was a treat. And they were mythic figures in a way, because we didn't see them, I think, the same way we do the ball players today. So it was important to me to want to key on these. Again, I had Tom on, scheduled Tom, when Tommy Lasorda had passed, because he had written an article recently. And I read the article, and he had a connection with Tommy Lasorda, which we wanted to talk about. He covered the Dodgers for many years out in Orange County, and then it stretched into he had done an article on Dick Allen recently. I've been looking for somebody to chat with about Dick Allen, because I think he's one of the most misunderstood athletes of our time. So again, I think Dick Allen belongs in the Hall of Fame. Obviously, Henry Aaron and Tommy Lasorda. Hang on one second, guys. Gosh. Talking and typing at the same time is not easy. Yeah, Tom's having some technical difficulties getting in. We're probably going to have a phone call like we did with Hal McCoy a few weeks ago, unfortunately, but that's fine. There he is. So let's welcome in.
Call from. To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
Good morning, Tom.
Morning, Tom. Good morning.
Hey, how you doing this morning?
All right, other than a technical problem.
Well, that happens, unfortunately, once in a while. I had the same problem with Hal McCoy a couple of weeks ago, and I didn't think of the phone number until late. So I thought about it quicker with you. It's hard once we've started the StreamYard broadcast to kind of switch off to Zoom or FaceTime. So it happens once in a while. Usually it's an easy application, but whatever. The more advanced we get technically, the further backwards I go sometimes as well. So.
Nothing's easy for me. That's the problem. I mean, doesn't matter whether you can write well or tell good stories. You got to be able to do this stuff.
Yeah, no worries. So this will be fine. We've done it in the past, and we can still get the point across. So I'd introduced you, and I'd kind of given a little bit of your history. Why don't you, before we jump into talking about, I was telling the audience how we'll be talking about Tommy Lasorda, and that's how our conversation started. And we set up the show, and that unfortunately, we lost Henry Aaron since then. And also we wanted to talk a little about Dick Allen today. But why don't you tell us a little bit about your career, Tom, and and the things that you've done real quickly before we dive into that.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I graduated from Marquette. I grew up in Rochester, New York, one of 10 children, and 9 of us graduated from Catholic universities, and one of us from Buffalo State. But anyway, I went to Marquette. In the wake of Watergate, everyone wanted to take journalism, so I took that. I covered the women's team as a sophomore, covered the men's team as a senior, where Oliver Lee was the best player on the team.
I remember.
Oliver was an amazing talent. He was from DeLand, Florida, 6'7", could shoot, jump through the gym, just didn't play any defense whatsoever, and was not a real disciplined guy. He lived on my floor, and I can speak from experience. But his brother Vince used to visit him, and we got to know his brother Vince a little bit, because he came up quite often from Florida. And then years later, I ran into the late, great Mark Murata, who was a teammate of Oliver's, and Mark told me who Vince was. Vince was Vince Carter Sr.
Oh, really?
Vince's dad. And he said, think about it. Isn't his jump shot exactly the same? Didn't Oliver jump through the roof? Yeah, that's amazing. So this was Vince Carter's. They grew up together, same mom, different dad, Vince and Oliver. And Vince, I think, I never got the chance to talk to Vince. I hope to someday, junior and senior, to ask him, maybe did he learn from Oliver's mistakes and become a more disciplined guy? So Vince basically played Oliver's career and his. Who plays over 20 years? That's 2 careers worth. And I always look at it as one for himself and one for his uncle.
Yeah, that's interesting perspective. I mean, you certainly covered a lot of different areas of the country in your career too, being in New York market, the Boston market, the West Coast, and then the Midwest as well. What was your favorite spot?
Yeah. After graduating from Marquette, I went out and worked in L.A. part-time for a while. After, I decided to security guard job that lasted 3 months before I moved on from that. And I tried selling cars. That lasted 2 days before I got fired. So I ended up part-time and then worked it into full-time. I had 2 part-time jobs and slept on the floor of one of them sometimes. Just when you're young, you can do that. And I ended up covering high schools, and then worked it into backup baseball on the Angels and Dodgers, and worked it into full-time Dodger beat, which was my first break. Then I went to Chicago. After covering the 88 Dodger World Champs, I wrote a column in Chicago. Well, first I wrote for the National, then for the Southtown.
One of my favorite publications, by the way, the National. I missed the National.
Yeah, that was a great publication. And I went from there to write a column at the Southtown. I did the first 3 Bulls championships. Went to Baltimore for a year before Cal broke the streak. Then I go to New York, and I am a baseball columnist there and cover 4 Yankee World Championships in a 5-year span.
You're a lucky charm, Tom.
Unbelievable. Did radio at ESPN for a couple of years. Got fired and replaced by Stephen A. Smith. Then went out to Chicago and did a column at the Southtown after the no, I got the wrong order here. So then I went to Kansas after New York and covered a national champion basketball team and the best football team ever, 12-1 with the Orange Bowl. So I was a lucky charm. I got to tell you, I go to New England and I covered their 6th. In Boston, covered their 6th Super Bowl titles, so they didn't need my lucky charm. They were well on their way.
Well, maybe we need you now. I'm a Patriot fan, so maybe we ought to bring you back to the Boston area because we could use some help right now. So, well, let's jump into the topic that we wanted to chat about, to the topics, I guess it turned into. And I think we'll start with Tommy Lasorda, since that was kind of, where you made your bones, it sounds like, was out in LA and covering the Dodgers. And Tommy, obviously, is a Hall of Famer, one of the great characters in baseball history, in my mind. I mean, he not only bled Dodger blue, but he was a great ambassador for the game of baseball. and a great manager. I mean, he went to 2 World Series, so he wasn't just all showman. So tell us a little bit about your recollections of Tommy Lasorda. And I think there was somebody you wanted me to. I can't remember the name. You said make sure I ask about Tommy meets so and so, but let's not forget that.
Yeah, I remember. But I'm glad you put it that way. That he's a great ambassador first, and then a great manager, because the fact that he was such a great manager, such a ham, so much the face of baseball, really, that was his top layer, and really that overhead of guy he was. He was really, really good at working with young players in spring training who weren't anywhere near the majors, and pumping their confidence up, but instructing them as well.
Yeah.
From all this, everything you learned, he remembered. And he was a great baseball guy, could really tell a prospect from a non-prospect until he got to know them personally. And then he was kind of influenced by whether he liked their personalities or not, but really had a great eye. And I maintain the greatest manager ever, because he had 9 rookies of the year. And what sport is more about insecurity than a sport where you can get to the Hall of Fame if you succeed 3 times out of 10? He purged their insecurity. Doesn't matter if his delivery was corny, it worked. The players would be limping into his office, he'd pump them up, and they'd walk out of the office with their chest out and feeling like they're the greatest ball player on earth. He really knew how to put guys in a great frame of mind, especially in a pennant race when they pull out of a race or having a bad year. He'd wander, his focus would wander. In fact, there was a foul ball hit way up to the press box. Not many get up there because it's so high at the stadium. But it went right to me. I dropped it. 10 seconds later, I get paged to the phone. Here's Lasorda standing next to Joe Ferguson. When Ferguson was one of his coaches, they're pointing up at the press box. Lasorda pointing up in his crooked finger saying, "If I ever see you ripping one of my players' defense again." This is the game. But he was, he was a real character. He had a hot temper. Feet didn't fit well at all, which is unfortunate. That was kind of his mole, his little flaw applying the ointment. But but he was very generous with his time, and liked to do favors for people. One example, when I was working in Chicago for the Southtown, a drug company had pitched, you mention our drug, what the Earl is taking, we'll give you access. And I said, well, yeah, that's interesting, because it was about panic disorder, and I thought that'd be interesting to talk to Earl about his panic, but then I talked mostly about his career with him. And as we're walking around, we had lunch, everything. We're walking around this big hotel in Chicago, and I think it's the Hyatt. And we're walking through the hotel, and we're walking toward the escalator. And who's coming down the escalator but Tommy Lasorda? And Tommy says, "Earl Campbell, you know Tom Keegan? He's interviewing you for a story? Wow, you've been retired and you're still that big time that Tom Keegan finds you? Woo!" He really played it up, and after Tommy goes on his way and we go on our way, "Man, I didn't know you were so big time." I said, "Well, you'll never hear that from me, Earl."
Yeah, Earl Campbell. I can't remember. I can't believe I couldn't remember that name when I was writing my notes the other day.
Oh, he's one of the great running backs of all time. He had speed, but he's mostly known for just bowling people over.
Yeah.
And that was a thrill, really a thrill that day to hang out with Earl Campbell. And then Tommy turned it into a thrill for Earl to hang out with me the way he pitched me.
That's awesome. Listen, you talked about Tommy, developing players. And one thing that always stuck with me was, Tommy, before he even reached the majors as the third base coach under Walter Alston, he was a minor league manager, and he developed a lot of these guys who became stars for the Dodgers in the early 70s and through that run of the late 70s into the early 80s. I mean, the longest in major, I think, still it's got to be longer than any other collection of players, Say and Russell and Lopes and Garvey. He really developed those guys in the minor leagues, right?
Yeah, he sure did. I got to know Lopes as a coach of Baltimore and Russell as the coach of the Dodgers. Great guy. Yeah, he did. He worked with him, and he worked in the majors with young players, too. He just pump up their confidence. I mean, 9 rookies of the year.
Amazing.
Yes, the Dodgers had good scouting, but a lot of that was Tommy developing. Don't forget the development is very important, and not just developing the skills and the techniques. It's developing the mind. Baseball is such a mental game, and I really think that Tommy is very, very underrated for that. Very underrated.
Well, I mean, just the fact that he won that World Series in 1988 with that collection of guys and his best player hurt against a great Met team is one of the great managerial feats of all time, I think.
Yeah, a great Mets team to get to the World Series, and a great A's team with Kirk Gibson having one at bat the entire time, Mickey Hatcher batting third, and they had a great pitching staff. It was, that was really one of the great feats. But that's Tommy pumping them up, and Bob Costas hits an assist there because they're in the clubhouse, and Bob Costas was making fun of the lineup, and Tommy really went to town with that. I believe it was Costas, and he fired them up that way, and they went out of there. You don't think of baseball as an emotional sport as much as football, but Tommy was able to figure out a way to do that, and it made them emotional in a way that sharpened their focus, got their adrenaline going, and I think adrenaline helps athletes sharpen their focus. And again, Tommy did that better than any manager I ever saw.
Yeah, and I think that's missing in the game today with all the analytics, and it's like managers are out there pushing buttons, and there isn't that type of motivation that's being used on teams today. So lesser teams don't rise above their capabilities like Tommy's teams did.
Great point, because why would the players, and this is what general managers miss, why would the players have the same amount of respect for today's managers as they did before? Players aren't stupid. They know who's making the lineup card out.
Right.
I mean, Dave Roberts is a fine baseball guy, but there's a limit to how much he can do when he shows up to work at 2 p.m. and the lineup card is already filled out by a bunch of guys, some of whom never played baseball. I mean, the baseball is upside down right now.
Yeah.
And part of the result is that it's not as good on the field as it used to be, not even close in my mind.
Yeah, and it kind of stands out. To me, it's been, put a bit under the microscope, the last 12 months with, in my mind anyway, with all these great players from the era that I grew up and you grew up, Tom. I think we talked about the other day, we're pretty much the same age. Or very close, but we grew up watching the same guys, and we're losing a lot of them today from the time where we watched the game we just mentioned being played a lot differently. The Tom Seavers, the Dick Allens, the Henry Aarons just recently. And I think it really shines a light on the difference between the game today and as we start to remember how it was played then.
Yeah, and that truly was the golden era of baseball. Because you can't say the golden era was before Jackie Robinson broke the Cutler line, because you had a large percentage of the best players in the world playing in a separate league. And so you have to look at the integrated period of baseball to even consider. And when Hank Aaron and Willie Mays were playing, it was 17, 18% black players, and now it's 7 or 8%. So, would Hank Aaron be a running back today for Alabama, and would his quarterback be Willie Mays? I mean, those are fair questions. So that was really the golden era, and to think you lose Lasorda, who's in as a manager, you lose Don Sutton, then you lose Dick Allen, and then Don Sutton, and then Hank Aaron. My gosh, Phil Niekro started that run off too.
Yeah, I think 11 or 12 Hall of Famers have passed in the last 12 months. So I guess it's part of the age we're reaching that this is happening, but it's still kind of sad.
Still a record.
Yeah, I did a vlog on it last week that these guys, it's part of your childhood, and you lose a little piece of yourself. At least I seem to feel like I do every time one of these guys passes.
Well, and I think a large part of that feeling, like the first time you lose a sibling, you really get this feeling. A large part of it is you start to smell your own mortality right around the corner. That kind of, you don't think about it, you don't stop and think about it that way, but that's sort of a cloud that hovers. Maybe I'm too dark a guy, but that's part of it.
No, it's only natural to think that way, right? I mean, I plan to live till I'm 120, but I don't know if that plan's going to work out. And plus, the downside of that means I'm going to have to work until I'm about 100. So I don't know if that's such a great plan.
Yeah. No, not with technology going the way it
is. Right. Back to Lasorda for a second anyway, before we wrap him up. I mean, could Tommy manage today?
Tommy, he could do it because he would do it his way. Frank Sinatra was a friend of his. I think they might have had a falling out late in Frank's life, but he'd do it my way. Mm-hmm. And then as soon as the general manager decides he can't do it his way, he'd fire him. And that's how that would end. So he could manage. But general manager today still probably wouldn't let him.
Yeah, I guess that was my follow-up. Could he manage? Sure. Would he get a job is a different question, right? So.
Yeah, which is thick.
It is kind of sad. Listen, there's a local connection here. I'm in upstate New York, as I mentioned to you. I live in East Greenwich, which is a suburb of Albany. And Tommy pitched for the Schenectady Blue Jays in the minor leagues. And he pitched a game against the Amsterdam Rugmakers, and I can't remember the year, but I believe he struck out like 25 guys in a game. So Tommy had a little bit of talent. What's that, Tom?
He had a curveball.
Yeah.
Tommy had a curveball. He didn't throw hard, but he had a good curveball. And I remember one day, you just never know how Tommy was going to react to questions. I mean, sometimes the sense of humor in him would make him laugh, and other times he would just blow his top, and the rest of us would laugh as soon as we left the office. But so there were always laughs involved. But one guy who was not a regular guy, he just had come in to do a story on something. He said, Tommy, you have the International League record for wins. You still have it. I don't know if he still does. I bet he does, though. You have the International League record for wins. Is that an indication more of how good a pitcher you were or how limited a pitcher you were? And Tommy laughed and he said, well, the guy I got sent down for was Sandy Koufax, so you tell me. So the last roster spot on Sandy Koufax's first year came down to Tommy or Koufax. And, remember somebody tried to hide, I think it was the Dodgers tried to hide Clemente on the Montreal roster and didn't protect him, and the Pirates got him there.
Right.
So I don't think they got to let that happen with Koufax.
You talked about Tommy's tirades. I think, in my mind, it's his most famous one. And I'm sure it was before your time covering the team, but the one where he went off when Dave Kingman, I think Kingman was with the Cubs at the time. Yeah. I'm not sure. He had 3 home runs, and they asked him about his performance that night.
Yeah. What did you think of Dave Kingman? When I worked at the New York Post, Dan Hannigan, Hondo was the top desk guy.
Yeah.
Putting the paper together, and he, I put Tommy on the phone for him, and he asked him, after exchanging pleasantries, he said, I've always wanted to ask you, what did you think of Dave Kingman's performance? And Tommy launched right into it for him on the phone. So, yeah, that was a great one. My personal favorite is the Kurt Bavacqua one. Really,
I don't know if I know that one.
Okay, you got to look it up and listen to it because it's great.
I will.
They had accused me of having his pitcher throw at Bavacqua, and it's really good. I'm not going to spoil it because I won't do it as well. But I golfed with Bavacqua in some charity thing a few years after that, and he had not forgiven him at that point. He did not see any humor in it. But yeah, you got to look it up. Kurt
I will actually.
If you go to Kurt Bavacqua's Facebook page, you'd have to go back a few years.
Yeah.
But you'll find on that that I posted a picture of me blowing a bubble, and it's unbelievable how big the bubble is. And Bavacqua was impressed that I could challenge him someday. We'll face each other in a competition, which means he knows he would win. Kurt Bavacqua blew the biggest bubble in baseball history.
I remember that NBC Saturday Game of the Week had a big contest with players, right? And he won I don't know what he won. He probably won a year's supply of Topps baseball cards. I don't know what he won, but.
Or Bazooka Bubblegum.
Or Bazooka Bubblegum, right? The worst stuff ever made. Oh, gosh. I was going to play that Tommy clip today, and I thought, well, maybe I shouldn't play that. It gets a little blue, so we won't do that. But it's funny, if you have not watched this, if you haven't not watched the Dave Kingman question of Tommy Lasorda, guys, look it up. If you're a Dodger fan, you know it well, I'm sure. Just for those of you,
Bavacqua too.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And look up the.
Go
ahead.
You should put a little poll on your website. Which is better.
I think I might do that.
Run both clips and ask them which is better.
That's a great idea. I think I might do that. I'm trying to get Kirk Bavacqua on the team, or the team. Good grief, the team, the show, and I haven't had any luck yet. But I'm not going to stop there because I think he'd be a great guest. I've seen him on some other shows.
Well, go on his Facebook page and ask him.
Yeah, that's where I did reach out to him. So I'll try again. Sometimes it takes a few times to get these guys, which is fine. So for those of you just joining us, my guest today is Tom Keegan. Tom's been a sports writer all over the country, as we mentioned at the top, covering some of the great teams. He was kind of a lucky charm when he hit a city. The team started to win. So we just got through talking about Tommy Lasorda. We're going to move on a little bit. I want to welcome those that I see in the room that have said hello. Dave, Guyette, my dad. My dad's my biggest fan. He's always here every Friday morning and Sunday morning. Bob Engel, good morning. Bob and Jeanette. Ted Bubniak, good morning. And to the rest of you, good morning. Dave Bubniak actually mentioned the tirade that Tommy had actually on the field about when the ball hit Reggie in the leg in the 78 World Series, which was obviously quite a 20 minutes of baseball. It was different then,
How about
too.
Doug Rao?
Yeah.
Yeah, taking Doug Rao out of the game, and Rao wouldn't give him the ball.
Yeah, I think we could probably come up with a highlight reel that would cover 2 hours at least, of some of these clips just from in games. So let's switch gears a little bit, because I want to make sure we can touch on both Henry Aaron and Dick Allen a little bit. But I want to start with Henry Aaron. Obviously, in my mind, Henry Aaron has got to have been, if not the greatest player. I mean, there's probably been guys with better athletes. I don't know, maybe not better athletes. I don't know. He was a great athlete. He did everything. He was a 5-tool player most of his career, right? Most consistent guy. I mean, the guy never got hurt, never hit more than 50 home runs. I think his high was 47 or so, and he only hit, but he was between 30 and 44 like every year for 20 some years.
And he didn't hit the tape measure shots. He hit them
just clear defense
over the fence. That's all that matters.
Yeah. And I know that you had at least I saw a picture with an article that you had. I don't know if you spent time interviewing Henry Aaron, but I reflect back on 1974. I'm a 13, soon to be 14-year-old kid, and I'm watching this and I'm rooting for Henry Aaron. I didn't really grasp at that time everything that this man had on his shoulders. 13 years old in 1973, you're not that worldly, right? You don't know all of this stuff.
Right.
You would today, probably. But what he went through, just the perseverance to be able to withstand that pressure, the racism, the death threats, everything else, and still perform at a high level is amazing to me, even more today than it was obviously then.
Well, it is amazing, and it's amazing to us because we're mere mortals.
Yeah.
Hank Aaron was a strong man, every description of the word strong. And he was a good guy.
Yeah.
And that 20 minutes I spent just watching Bob Wolf and Hank Aaron talk, and Bob said, "Here, I'll take a picture of you." Again, "Oh, you don't have to do that, Mr. Aaron." "Oh, it's no problem. Not a bother at all." So, yeah, he was definitely a humble man. I thought that was a better setting to read him than to interview him, because he was with his old friend Bob Wolf, the columnist who covered him when he broke into the big leagues in Milwaukee. And, and I think part of the reason Aaron maybe is one of the underrated all-time greats is because he played at the exact same time in the same league as Willie Mays. And Willie was a more spectacular outfielder than Hank Aaron. Willie was even faster than Hank Aaron. Hank Aaron's speed was underrated, especially for guys our age, because we didn't see him in his youngest years.
Right.
But to me, because Willie Mays had an even stronger arm, even better outfielder, he played center, Hank played the corner. I think Willie is considered the better all-around player. And Willie was a phenomenal hitter. But Hank was an even better hitter. And Willie lost some time there. It's never talked about because it wasn't as much time as the Ted Williams. But Willie lost some time in the military.
Early 50s, right?
Yeah. Very, very early, yeah. So, he wouldn't have had Hank's home run record, but he'd have even more than he had. So, but that's what a great era. I mean, those two and Clemente are the starting outfield for the National League All-Stars. Give me a break.
All right. It's funny. You watch, and again, I think part of it's, again, the immediacy of everything that we have access to, the fact that we can see these guys on TV every day. If it's not playing a game, it's on Sports Center. I mean, All-Star games, I talked about this in my vlog too. When I was a kid, All-Star games were so cool because I didn't get to see, like you mentioned, the really great players of the game you didn't see week in and week out and day out. So it was awesome to see those, and it doesn't feel the same watching these games today. I mean, they're great players, but they're certainly different kind of players because it's all about home runs and strikeouts today, right? So,
yeah, I think a big part of that, you're right, is that there was only one game a week. The NBC game of the week was Kurt Gowdy, and I thought his best partner was Pee Wee Reese. He was terrific.
I don't remember Pee Wee Reese.
We only saw him once. Yeah, that was when we were very young.
Yeah,
he was. It was so cool to see that NBC game of the week, and then to see the All-Star game. I mean, for a while, I really hated Pete Rose for bowling into Ray Fosse in that All-Star game.
Yeah.
You know what that rule, I think, juiced the All-Star game for me. It's still not going to ever be like what it was when you were a kid, but and I thought it was kind of silly when they put it in, but I liked it when they went to the whoever wins the All-Star game gets the home field advantage in the World Series. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, they did that when after the year they ran out of players and couldn't finish the game, I think, right?
Right. I was there in Milwaukee.
Yeah.
Commissioner Bud Selig's hometown.
Yeah, that was an embarrassment for baseball in a way, just again, I don't think, and part of it is my age and my cynicism, I guess, is worse than it was when I was a kid. It just, none of these things feel the same. I guess it's my, get off my lawn syndrome I'm running into here.
You know what? I think part of it is to get the trophy. Like Torrey wanted to make sure everyone got in the game.
Yeah.
No. Manage it to win.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, and even in that, I would have a AAA player from each league. So an affiliate of an American League team, an affiliate of a National League team, has to have a minimum of, let's say, 6 years in AAA service and has never pitched in the big leagues. And each year you pick one designated extra inning guy, where if it goes into a ridiculous length and you run out of pitchers, you have a AAA starting pitcher. It's a great honor to him.
Yeah.
whoever's having the best year among guys with 6 years AAA experience who's never pitched in the big leagues, they're there. They get to experience the all-star experience. And what a great story that'd be for each of those guys each year. And what a great thrill for those guys. That would be a really neat thing to do.
Yeah, that's a great idea, Tom. You got to maybe you should have been Major League Baseball commissioner, and maybe that should be your next life. You make too much sense. You make too much sense. You can't do that job.
You know, there was actually a guy. What gave me the idea was the Texas Rangers used to have a minor league guy who would go to the. He was like the designated guy to go on this road in spring training in case they ran out of pitchers. And that guy, during his career, and I don't think he ever went to the majors. His last name was Casey. During his career, he and his wife welcomed a baby into the world. It was a baby boy. Guess what they named him?
I'm not sure.
Last name Casey.
Oh, really?
Justin Casey.
That's too funny.
Isn't that great?
That's an awesome name. Absolutely. I mean,
you could call it the Justin Casey. Name it after him, that extra guy in the All-Star roster.
Yeah, I think it would make it makes perfect sense. Listen, when you had
the third goalie in hockey.
Well, I was just going to mention that too. Actually, I was going to go back to Aaron there, but I was going to mention that they do it during regular season games. They've got a designated emergency goalie, right?
Right. Yeah.
Hasn't come into play too many times.
Guy who plays in rec league.
Yeah, I don't remember if it happened. I don't think it was last year, but 2 years ago, I think it came into play for in one of the games. If I remember correctly.
Blackhawks.
Yeah.
I believe it was the Blackhawks. Yeah.
Yeah, wasn't he
those guys? It's a guy who's played in college and then plays in a rec league, and he has to show up at the game. In fact, they have a rotation of them, but I think he shows up at the game in case the first two goalies get hurt. And it actually came into play once, and the guy, I believe, won the game.
I did. Yeah, that was the big story. Circling back to Hank Aaron before we move on to Dick Allen, because I do want to talk a little bit about Dick Allen before we go, because it's I have some interesting thoughts on Dick Allen. I want to get your thoughts. I mean, when you talked to Henry Aaron, I mean, what were his thoughts on that chase of Babe Ruth and the things that he went through? I mean, he was such a gentleman, and he never really made a huge deal about it. Maybe, in articles or books later on in his career, he might have opened up a little bit. But in your conversations, what was his thoughts about what he had to go through?
Actually, I just listened to him and Bob talk to each other and reminisce, and he made sure I was included, but it wasn't an interview, so I didn't ask him about that. Okay. But later in life, he did open up about it, and what he said that his message he wanted out there is that we have a long way to go as a society in terms of racism.
Yeah.
He's asked about it and answered. He wasn't, he never wanted to be painted a victim, but my gosh, he went through more than anybody, I bet. Maybe more than Jackie Robinson. Who knows? It's
possible. Yeah. I mean, those two guys, I think, stand out in sports. Obviously, in real life, there's a lot of, we use the word hero too much in sports, but, those are two guys that I think fit the description for sure.
Yeah.
And we don't have those types of guys anymore, So let's move on to Dick Allen. Dick Allen, to me, is one of the most egregious Hall of Fame snubs. I mean, never gotten close. I don't think he's got more than he never topped 20% of the vote. He had a great career. He's a Rookie of the Year, MVP, finishing the top 10 of the MVP 3 or 4 times. It feels like just a misunderstood person whose career is kind of forgotten in a way.
Yeah, he led the league in 15 different offensive categories.
Yeah.
That's incredible when you think about it. Another guy with underrated speed. he had outrageous triples total, which tells you how hard he hit the ball and how fast he was. And if you look at his career, I wrote a column on it. It's just amazing how he was year after year one of the top guys. Got a ton of MVP votes. Won the MVP one year, as you said. Rookie of the year, as you said, and was. They used to give him a hard time for not. Gene Mauch told me this, and I asked Dick Allen about this years later when I met him in his hotel room in Chicago. He and his wife, I spent an hour interviewing him. Just a super nice guy, quiet, gentleman, and was probably a little sensitive, but he didn't take batting practice. So he started reading in the paper that, that means he's lazy and not prepared and this and that. So he went up one day in batting practice and hit like 14 over the fence and just threw his bat down and didn't, just to prove the point. Look, and he believed that didn't prepare him for the game because you couldn't duplicate the speed. Obviously, the BP pitcher
right
is, throwing 80 at the most, and in the game they're throwing 90. Some guys like to loosen up. He didn't like to. It didn't seem to hurt him. It was crazy. And he made the word boo at third base. He played some third base early, and he was mostly a third baseman early in his career, I think. But he made the word boo with his cleats. And everyone made a big deal about that because of he's sticking it to the Boo Birds in Philadelphia.
Yeah,
but
he definitely.
Just look at his numbers. I mean, this guy's numbers were outrageous.
He did have a love-hate relationship with the fans in Philadelphia, and he didn't always get along with his teammates, which I think ended up kind of contributing to why he wanted to get out of town. He started wearing his batting helmet on the field. What I don't remember the incident that led to that. I'm sure he had something thrown at him.
Probably pennies maybe or something.
Yeah.
So,
I almost feel like
there was I don't know why it was either, but there was a man named a baseball writer for years and years in Boston named Mike Shalin, and Mike had a brain tumor and died. And Mike had written a book, The Best Players Not in the Hall of Fame. And number one on Mike's list was Dick Allen. I believe it was 2 days after Mike Shalin died, Dick Allen died.
That's interesting.
And the lead, to my column was that Mike always wanted to see Dick Allen get inducted into the Hall of Fame, and neither of them will see it now. And isn't that sad?
Do you think Dick has a chance with the Veterans Committee at some point? I think he's been close a couple of times, but I don't even think you can come up every year.
He got within a vote once. Yes, I do think he'll get in. I know you can't come up, but I think this year they'll want to put someone in who's alive, so they have a ceremony where there's actually a live ball player who gets inducted.
We just had a question about what are your thoughts on no players being elected to the Hall of Fame this year? I guess I'll go there while we're in this middle of this topic. Do you have any thoughts on the fact that nobody got in?
Yeah, I do vote. I'm a voter. I did a column on my ballot. I voted for 5 guys. Bonds, Clemens, Sheffield, Manny Ramirez, and Kurt Schilling.
Good vote for Schilling. Okay.
The take I have is that I try to do. It's not a legal ballot, okay? So I don't care who's been caught, who hasn't been caught. It's an opinion ballot, so it's on me to make my best educated guess and then vote my conscience. Did this guy do steroids? And if so, how much did it inflate his numbers? If there were no steroids in the game, was he a Hall of Fame caliber player? Nobody was doing it. Well, clearly, Bonds and Clemens clearly are.
Right.
Manny Ramirez is a big steroid abuser. twice suspended. But that guy was one of the all-time see the ball, hit the ball great. So I vote for him. Sheffield,
Yeah.
a little bit tougher call. He had a steroid thing that he admitted to. And Schilling had the great postseasons, and I don't care what a jerk he is and what he says. I mean, I don't like anybody saying that stuff, but in terms of my Hall of Fame vote, he showed good character pitching as a teammate. But he, bad guy. I won't listen to his speech when he finally gets in. I won't watch it, but I'll vote for him until he gets in.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's worse people in the Hall of Fame than Kurt Schilling. I mean, Ty Cobb's in there, who's one of the worst human beings ever walked the face of the earth, most likely, from everything I can have learned.
Right.
And as far as
maybe there aren't worse than Schilling, but he was a good enough ball player, in my view, to get in.
Yeah, it's not a Hall of Integrity, right? It's a Hall of Baseball Fame, right? So your playing career is what matters.
And the thing with the steroids is, okay, let's say everyone in the game knew I did it, but I never got caught because I knew how to beat the system. Well, then you've got a Hall of Fame of cheaters then. Not only you got to be a great ball player, you got to be a great cheater too. Do we want that, a Hall of Fame of cheaters?
No, my thoughts on
guys who are good at cheating.
Yeah, I was kind of glad to hear that you mentioned Bonds and Clemens and have the take you have. My take is similar. I mean, to me, even Pete Rose, I put him in and it's on his plaque, warts and all, right? It's part of the history of the game. Pete Rose needs to be in a Hall of Fame. Barry Bonds needs to be a Hall of Fame. Put it on their plaque. They played during the steroid era. Pete Rose, was suspended for life for betting on baseball, but put it there. But as far as the steroid guys go and judging their careers, you have no idea. None of us have any idea who was on it, who wasn't. Well, we know some of the guys that were on it, but as far as I know, they were all doing it. So they were playing against other guys who were doing steroids. So how do you differentiate from, one from the other? So,
well, I used to talk to players off the record who I felt weren't doing it, and they'd tell me who they thought was doing it and why. So I had a little inside knowledge in terms of that, and I played that in, but I tell you what, the steroid era, I don't buy that phrase because today they do it in a sophisticated way where the testosterone only stays in your body X amount of hours. So if you know what time you're going to the ballpark, you do it after the game, you shoot up the steroids. So by the time you get to the testosterone, by the time you get to the ballpark the next day, even if they test you right off the bat, you're going to pass because it only takes X amount of hours to go through your system, 12 hours or whatever.
Well, they seem to be smart enough too not to do things that make their hat size grow like 5 times what it should be in a year, so it doesn't stand out so much. Right? I mean, Barry Bonds is so obvious.
Yeah, you're right. And that type of steroid that makes your hat size grow was detectable. Now the stuff they have isn't as detectable.
Yeah.
So it's.
Yeah. Listen, before I wrap up on Dick Allen, and we're getting close to the end here, unfortunately. We'll have to have you back on again because it's become obvious through our conversation. There's a lot more that we can chat about. Back to Dick Allen quickly. It's funny when he did leave Philadelphia and was traded to St. Louis. He kind of set into motion in a way.
I lost you for one.
I'm sorry.
I lost you for 1 second.
Okay. When he was traded, when Dick Allen was traded from Philadelphia to St. Louis, when he demanded a trade, he, in a way, set off the whole free agency era by getting traded for Curt Flood, who refused to report to Philadelphia. So he was in the middle of a controversy that he had nothing to do with.
I never thought of that connection.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Dick Allen found his way to controversy a lot of ways. He's a great player, though. I never understood. So when I was a kid, again, as I'm becoming aware of Dick Allen is when he's with St. Louis for a year, then the Dodgers for a year. And I'm like, why is this great player? Nobody keeps him around. He's a great player. And he went to the White Sox and almost single-handedly led them to an AL West title in 74, I guess it was, right, when he won the MVP? Was it 74 or 73?
Yeah, I think it was 74.
Yeah.
I think it was 74. I could be wrong. But
Yeah, I think it was 74 too. He had a tremendous year, just carried that team on his back. And he got to play for a manager who finally just let him be himself, right? And Chuck Tanner.
Right. And, maybe he was a little sensitive. I'm a little sensitive too. Maybe that's why I bounced around so much. And, but that doesn't mean you're not good at your job. He was phenomenal at his job.
Right.
He's a good guy. Yeah, I mean, he clearly should be in. I have 5 brothers, and he's the only one, the favorite player of the 5 brothers, and my father's favorite was DiMaggio. But you had the favorite players in order of my brothers were Frank Robinson, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Dick Allen, Clemente was my favorite, and Johnny Bench. So the only one not in the Hall of Fame is the one who was number 1 in Mike Shalin's book.
That's funny.
Guys who should be in the Hall of Fame.
Gosh, my favorite was Bobby Mercer. My guy doesn't measure up to your guys at all.
Good guy, Bobby Mercer. Remember when he was announcing the Yankees when I covered?
Loved
he was
Bobby
one
Mercer.
of their color analysts. Yeah, I asked him, would Ricky Leday make it? He was their top prospect.
Yeah, I remember.
Super nice guy, Ricky Leday. So, I don't think so. I said, why? Too many swings and misses? He goes, not just that. When he swings and misses, a lot of times he misses by a lot, and that tells you he doesn't have the pitch recognition. And Ricky never really made it.
Yeah.
That was why. Maybe Bobby could have been a good scout or general manager. Of course, you can't know anything about baseball today to be a general manager.
Yeah, Bobby was
knows too much about baseball.
It was sad to see Bobby go so early. Like I said, he was my hero when I was a kid, and as I grew older, it's funny. People that I don't know, celebrity-wise, baseball players, movie stars, whatever. My wife thinks I'm crazy, and I think I've told this story on my show before. But I judge people by whether I'd like to sit and have a beer with them. And Bobby Mercer is in my top, 5 people I want to sit and have a beer with, and. That's how I judge people.
That's
so
great. You would have liked to have a beer with him. Same with Hank Aaron. Same with Dick Allen.
Those guys.
I never met Clemente. Obviously, I was 13 when he died, or 12.
Unfortunately, Curt Schilling wouldn't make that list, but doesn't mean he wasn't a great player. He killed the Yankees in 2001. Right. I mean, what great performances in the playoffs and the World Series for him against the Yankees. And other teams too. His playoff record is just phenomenal. So.
Oh, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think he should be in, but I don't feel sorry for him that he's not. I do think should be in, and I do vote for him. And I think eventually he'll get in.
Yeah.
Veteran committee.
Do you think the Hall of Fame will take his name off the ballot as he's requested, or not?
They better not. That would be a totally.
Yeah.
I mean, they've caved in terms of access. You'd cover the induction ceremony. There was like a hour and a half open bar, basically, where you get to schmooze with the players. And it's great to see Wade Boggs at that, and Eddie Murray, and guys I'd covered. And now they don't have that anymore. They used to be able to play in the golf tournament. And now you can't even interview them after. So there's no access. So if they cave on that, it's like, wow, should the writers even bother helping them anymore by electing?
Yeah, well,
totally turn their backs on the writers,
which is unfortunate. And they're the guys who watch. They see more baseball. I understand the complaint that, oh my gosh, a bunch of guys who never played the game doesn't mean they don't understand the game. They watch the game for a living. They understand the game. I'm sure there's a few guys that, just whatever, don't really put in the time, but you certainly don't appear to be one of them. And I don't think the vote should ever be taken away from the sports writers. So just need to make sure that they're actually covering the games.
I don't know how to make brownies from scratch, but I sure know good brownies from bad brownies. Same with chocolate chip cookies.
That's a great analogy, actually. I got to remember that one. I like it a lot. Tom, listen, I appreciate you coming on today.
Yeah.
Where can people catch your columns? Is there something we can pitch so people can catch your work and catch your eye?
Yeah, NWITimes.com. I've been freelancing for them and for another paper. In my book, Sleeper Cars and Flannel Uniforms. Sleeper Cars and Flannel Uniforms that I did with Eldon Author, whose first name is misspelled in the baseball encyclopedia.
Well, that's interesting.
Correct spelling is ELDEN. But that's, I think, the best of my 3 books that I've written.
I'm glad you brought that up. I feel bad I didn't. I had it written down to bring up, and I missed that when I was trying to get you in the show. So you do have some books. Are they available on Amazon, by the way, and on Kindle or not?
Yes.
Okay, great. I got to check them out.
Notes on Amazon.
Yeah, there was also another book. I know you wrote a book about Ernie Harwell, which I'm interested in. Ernie Harwell was one of the great announcers in baseball history, and I definitely want to check that out too as well.
Yeah.
So.
And for a chapter of that, I visited Denny McLean in the minimum security prison that he was in, and that was a fascinating chapter. It was really interesting talking with Denny.
Excellent. Well, listen, I've enjoyed this hour a lot, Tom. I think it's, as I said a minute ago, it's become obvious that there's a lot more we can cover when topics come up, and I'd love to have you back on the show either Friday mornings or I do a show on Sunday mornings, and when there's some relevant information to chat about, I'd love to have you back on, and maybe we can work out the technical issues beforehand when we do have you back on.
Yeah. My son will be here before the next time I come on, and he'll figure it out.
That'll be great. Well, listen, I appreciate this. I mean, again, this is kind of a little more old school, and it's still fine. It works out fine. We got the information across, and you've given us some great information about some of the great characters in the game, some of the great people to play the game, and we're going to talk more about it as we go through time. So thank you for your time today, and you have a great...
Thanks.
Go ahead.
Thanks for having me, and I maybe I did that on purpose because I want to lose weight before your audience gets to see me.
Don't worry. Next to me, you probably look fine, so don't worry about that. So we'll work that out, and I'll be sharing this to your page if that's okay later on, and your fans and hopefully other people will catch it.
That'd be great. I appreciate it.
All right. Thanks for coming on today, Tom. Have a great weekend.
Thanks.
All right. Bye-bye. So, guys, that was my guest, Mr. I'm trying to turn the phone off here. There we go. He hung up. Excellent. Tom Keegan. Tom, again, writer for the Boston Post, or I'm sorry, the Boston Herald, Boston Post, New York Post, all over the country. Orange County Register, covered some of the greats of the game. We touched on just 3 of them today, and Tommy Lasorda, Henry Aaron, and Dick Allen. We jumped around, talked about some of the other topics that kind of surround it regarding the Hall of Fame and the recent election. So I hope those of you that see this will comment, post your comments. If you disagree with anything we said, that's fine too. You don't have to agree with everything that comes off here. I want to thank all of those who have watched the show live today. We'll be on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern time. We'll be talking again about the NFL and the Super Bowl and some NFL news, college basketball. I've got a hockey podcaster, Jim Beringer, coming on from The Last Word in Hockey. He'll be on at 10:30. We'll talk some hockey for the first time this season. And next week, we're working on a Super Bowl show. So whether I have guests or not is up in the air. I'll let you know this weekend. And on Super Bowl Sunday, I'll be on with the Mac and Jack show, along with some of the other hosts on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network. So I hope you'll join me either on that network, or I will be live streaming the show to TGI Sports Talk. So we'll be on for 3 hours at least, Sunday morning, February 7th, I believe it is, Super Bowl Sunday. So lots coming up, lots of news. Follow the page, like and follow the page, and you'll get all the updates. Thanks, Ted Bubniak. Thank you for the compliments. Dave Gayette, thanks for coming. Bob Engel, all of you that are watched live today at some point or another, and all of you that watch it later on. Keith Engel, TGI Sports Talk. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Engel, on Northeast Streaming Sports.